Hello chess friends and welcome to the channel. Today's game is from round 9 of the German Bundesliga 2018. The game was played yesterday afternoon. The Bundesliga, like in football, is a tournament for teams that is played in different German cities from November of last year 2018 to April 2019. The game that I'm going to show you is a great game. Peter Leko with an elo of 2660 against Fabiano Caruana, the number 2 in the world, with an elo of 2828. Let's start with the game because there are many interesting points to focus on. So let's start. Peter Leko with the white pieces opens with d4 and Fabiano Caruana answers with knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, d5, knight to c3, we are in the Queen's Gambit declined, and here comes a sideline, a6. This is a sideline that Carlsen used 7 times, winning 4 times and drawing 3. Caruana himself tried this line 3 times, but was never able to win a game. 2 loss and 1 draw. Here comes c captures on d5, e recaptures on d5, and bishop to g5, pinning the knight and out of the pawn chain because, of course, sooner or later e3 will come to free the bishop. Bishop to e6, e3, knight in b goes to d7, bishop to d3, h6 hitting the bishop, and here comes bishop to f4. The best idea. Let's go back one move. If in this position White plays bishop to h4, this is not a mistake, it's just an inaccuracy, but let's remember it, because putting the bishop on h4 gives the possibility to black to play bishop to d6 and conquering the diagonal. Sooner or later, the dark square bishop must go to g3, losing 1 tempo. Okay, let's go back. Bishop to b4. g5, bishop to g3, and knight to h5, attacking again the bishop. The bishop moves to e5, attacking the rook, and now if the knight captures the bishop, it's true that black has the bishop pair, but let's watch the line. If knight captures on e5, this is the variation that I'm going to show you. The knight captures on e5, opening the discovered attack on the knight on h5, the knight must go to f6, here comes short castle and white is ready to push with f4, and this position will give him a good initiative. Let's go back to our game. After bishop to e5, Caruana doesn't capture the bishop but retreats the knight on f6, and in this position the pawn still has the knight in front of it and the position remains equal. Okay, knight in h goes to f6, the bishop back to g3, queen to b3 seems a bit more accurate, again knight to h5 and knight to e2. This is a maneuver made to recapture with the knight, even if it seems to me that in this type of positions recapturing with the h-pawn is always better. Caruana captures the bishop, Peter Leko recaptures with the knight, and here comes g4 attacking the knight. The knight goes back to d2, h5, queen to c2, and c5, this is a good move. D captures on c5, knight recaptures on c5, also attacking the bishop, and this recaptures is better than capturing with the bishop. Let's go back one move. Capturing on c5 with the bishop, it seems that, that with this capture black develops a new piece, but the bishop on this diagonal is is blocked by this pawn chain, and so sooner or later the bishop must spend another move to change diagonal to be more effective. So let's go back to our game. Knight captures on c5, this is the best recapture. Castle for white and queen to f6, another good move that activates the queen. Knight to b3, knight captures the bishop on d3, queen recaptures on d3, and let's watch a bit the position. 2 white knights against the black player with 2 bishops. Which side is better? The 2 bishops are surely superior to the knights, especially in this position. You see how many lines are open or semi-open. But white has a better pawn structure and a better king safety. So both sides have got their chances. Here comes h4, attacking the knight. The computer, if we go back one move, slightly prefers long castle for black. Here comes rook in a, goes to c1 with check, king to b8, and the position is playable, and the computer prefers, slightly prefers this line. Anyway, h4, hitting the knight, knight goes back to e2, and bishop to d6. Knight in b goes to d4, this is a good centralization. The only idea behind this move is to centralize the knight. This bishop is not a target, because if the knight captures the bishop, black will recapture with the pawn, improving the pawn structure. Rook to c8, rook in a, go to d1, rook to c7, queen to d2. This is a move that controls both c1 if white wants to move the rook to c1, and also add a second control on f4 in case of the knight jump. Queen to e5, threatening just checkmating one, and here f4 is the best answer. G captures on f3, knight recaptures on f3, attacking the queen, also protecting h2. Queen to f5, and it's true that the queen now sits on the f5, and it seems that there is a possibility of a discovered attack, but the only element that white can capture is the pawn on h4, and white can't capture the pawn because knight captures with the discovered attack against the queen is a mistake. Here comes queen to h7, not only attacking the knight, but the knight can't move away because h2 is checkmate, or no, is not checkmate, but something that wins the game. Okay, so let's go back. Queen to f5 is safe. Knight in f goes to d4, attacking the knight, attacking the queen. Queen to e5, and again there is the threat against h2. Knight to f4. Queen to e4, looking at g2, and that's why Peter Leko plays rook to f2, adding another protection to the g2 square. Here comes h3, g3, king to d7, and this is a good move. At least the king now is not on, is still in the center, but not where white in future can break with the pawn. Knight to f3, and here comes bishop captures on f4, and maybe this is a little inaccuracy, because what does black gain from this exchange? Let's watch. After he captures on f4, he gains a pass pawn. But how dangerous is it, this pass pawn? Not much, because the pawn is not much advanced, the square in front of the pawn is completely controlled by the white pieces, and the pawn is not well supported because behind the pawn there is not a rook, but there is the king. Instead, if we go back, instead of bishop captures on f4, bishop to b4 is better because it will force, or now, or in a couple of moves, it will force a queen exchange, and maybe black can defend better. Okay, let's go back. We said bishop captures the knight on f4, he recaptures, and Caruana create a pass pawn. King to c8, because as I said before, the king is not well positioned behind the pawn, especially if the pawn want to advance. And rook to e1, attacking the queen. It's not so easy for Caruana to find the right plan, especially in time trouble. Why I say in time trouble? Because now Caruana has just 2 minutes on the clock, and Peter Leko is also in time trouble. He has about 4 minutes on his clock. Queen to f5, queen to d4, attacking the rook, a good centralization. Rook to d8, Caruana puts the rook behind the pass pawn, And here comes queen to a7. Let's stop. We are at move 35, and both the two players are almost playing on the increment. So let's stop and talk about the position. It's quite simple to understand who is better. White is winning because black has 3 isolated pawns and his king is not safe. Okay, d4 played by Caruana, and Peter Leko in time trouble doesn't see the winning move. He plays knight captures on d4 supported by the queen with tempo. Now he is a pawn up and black lost the pass pawn. But if we go back one move, knight to e5, this is the winning move because the knight now is controlling d7 and queen to a8 is checkmate. The only way to avoid checkmate is to give the king some squares. Rook to c2 create a safe square that is c7 for the king without abandoning the c file, because if the rook abandons the c file, the white rook will come to the c file with check and checkmate will follow soon. After rook to c2, g4 attacking the queen, queen to h7 tries to maintain the defense on the rook, but here comes f5, and this is the end because the rook can't capture on f2. Let's watch what happens, because here comes rook to c1 with check, rook to c2, rook capture with check, bishop to c4 is the only possible move, and that she's the king, but the bishop is not protected. Rook captures on c4 is checkmate. So knight to e5 was the winning move. Let's go back to our game. After knight captures on d4 threatening the queen, queen to d5, knight captures on e6 and f captures on e6. Here comes a3 because the pawn was under attack, rook to c6, rook in f goes to e2 and queen to b3. The queen goes back to f2 and rook to d3. Now both players reach the time control, and after some thought, Peter Leko plays queen to f1 attacking another isolated pawn. There is no way to protect this pawn. Here comes queen to b6 with check, king to h1, and queen to d4, at least protecting the h8 square. Queen captures on h3, white is 2 pawn up, rook to d2, and queen to g4. Queen to d5 with check, the king moves to g1, queen to d4 with check, and king to f1. Queen to d3, queen to g8 with check, king to c7, queen to g7 with check, and king to b6 seems the best move. Queen to e5, rook in c goes to c2, and when you have material advantage, it's a good idea to exchange queens and to try to exchange as many pieces as possible. But white can't do this yet. Let's watch what happens if queen to e3 that forces a queen exchange. The queen captures, rook captures, but all the advantage is lost because after rook to f2 with check, the game becomes a draw because it's a perpetual check. So after rook to c2, king to f2, this is a good move. Rook captures, queen recaptures with check, a good simplification, a good liquidation on the board. The queen for both rooks, rook captures and rook captures with check, king to a5 and rook to e3 attacking the queen. Caruana moves the queen to d4 attacking the rook, rook in b goes to e2 and the king advances to a4. King to g2 breaks the pin, queen to d5 with check, and rook to f3. b5 trying a counterplay on the queen side, but here comes g4, a5, rook to e5 again attacking the queen, queen to d1, and rook captures on e6. The third isolated pawn falls down. b4, a captures on b4, a recaptures on b4, and rook to e3. Here Caruana resigns because there is no way to advance the pawn. With this material advantage, white can also sacrifice both rooks for the pawn and the queen and still win on the king side. So let's continue and try some queen checks. Queen to c2, we check. King to h3. Queen to h7, we check. King to g3. Queen to c2, here comes f5. Queen to c7, we check. Rook to f4, also pinning the pawn. Queen to c1. Rook in e goes to f3, but after queen to g1 we check, and king to h3, the pawns are unstoppable. So a great game with many ideas to keep in mind, and I hope that you enjoyed it. As usual, don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel. Today's analysis is over. Thanks for watching and goodbye.